Okay, I'll go ahead and get started just to keep us on schedule. And this meeting is being recorded. So if you miss something, you'll be able to watch the recording afterwards as well. So again, welcome to today's Continuing Collaborations webinar and panel discussion. Today's presentation is an opportunity through the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program's Alumni Engagement Programming. And we're happy to be welcoming so many CADFP alumni joining us here today. My name is Randy Butler, and I am a program specialist at the Institute of International Education, working on the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship. And I'm also joined today by my colleague, Chris Carson, who will be helping collect your questions during today's Q&A portion, which is towards the end. A few reminders for today's Zoom setup. If you can please remember to keep your microphone on mute until we move into the small group discussion. That would be very helpful. And then if you have questions or comments during the presentation, you can type those into the chat. And during the Q&A portion towards the end, Chris will be helping collect those questions from the chat, and he'll be posing those to our panelists. The goal for today's discussion is to have CADFP alumni come away from the presentation with new ideas on how to continue the momentum of collaboration between the host and diaspora fellow. And whether that is ideas for new funding sources, how to create buy-in from institutional leadership, or other new ideas helpful for continuing to build institutional working relationships. On the screen here is our agenda for today. We're going to start off with some very brief introductions from our panelists, and then we'll move into each panelist giving a short background on their collaborative activities following their fellowship experience. After that, we'll have about 20 minutes for a moderated panel discussion to hear more about in depth from our panelists about their collaborations. And then we will move into a small breakout group opportunity. We will have 4 groups, and each of those groups will be led by one of our panelists. So you'll have the opportunity to select which group you want to join. And then finally, we will all rejoin here in the main room, and you'll have the opportunity to ask any final questions. So now I'd like to welcome our panelists, and perhaps each of you can just take a moment to share who you are, where you're based, and when you participated in the CADFP. And perhaps we start with Professor Agwu and Dr. Fada.
Okay, good day, everyone. I am Professor Nkechi Agwu, an ethnomathematician and a professor of mathematics at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, City University of New York, where I have been since 1995. I am a 3-time Carnegie Fellow, now an alumni. My first time was in 2014 at the Center for Gender Issues in Science and Technology, Federal University of Technology, FUTA, Akure. The second time was when I was doing my sabbatical from BMCC in 2016-2017 at the National Mathematical Center, and the third time was in 2018, again at the National Mathematical Center. And the project that I started on has continued from FUTA to the National Mathematical Center and is still ongoing till now with internal support from the center. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening and good morning, depending on where you are listening to us. I'm Dr. Feda Flora. I am from Egerton University, where my area of specialization is educational management. And as I continue to talk with each of us here, I would want to say my journey started when I was a lecturer at the Department of Curriculum Instruction and Education Management. I'm the host to one of the diaspora scholars from Massachusetts, Professor Robai Werunga. And I remember my journey is growing well. I started when I was a lecturer, and now I'm a Dean of the Faculty of Education. We started in 2023, and 2025 she has come back. Initially, we only wanted to look at special needs education and see how we can come up with a curriculum that takes care of creating awareness, especially at higher levels of education. Then we realized that we needed to move it to the next level, and this was now development of the special needs curriculum. But as we continue to finish this, more issues are coming in, and we are hoping that it's going to grow as we share today. Thank you so much.
Thank you
I guess it's my
both.
turn.
Yes, go ahead.
Sure. I'm Paul Ugo. I am a professor in the Department of English Language and Literature at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. My research and teaching areas include modern African literatures and cultures in general, Anglophone post-colonial literatures and cultural studies. I am not as lucky as Professor Agu. I am a two-time CADFP Fellow, the first time in 2015, I think, when I visited the Niger Delta University, the Faculty of Arts at the Niger Delta University in Nigeria. And my second trip was between June and August of 2023 when I visited the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies at the University of Lagos. And the work that I did, particularly at the University of Lagos, has expanded beyond the institution to include the University of Abuja, Obafemi Awolowo University, Federal University Lokoja, and the TET Fund office. TET Fund is the, I think it's a Tertiary Education Trust Fund. It's a fund that was an office that was established about a decade or so ago that essentially gets a significant percentage of the revenue accruing from crude oil in Nigeria, and funding from that institution, from that office, is used to support tertiary institutions in Nigeria. So I've been working with them to support researchers to come to the University of Waterloo, but also to train the administrators. One of the things we're planning to do later on this year is we'll be hosting at least 40 university presidents from Nigeria. So it's been a sort of really exciting experience for me. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm next.
Yes,
So,
go ahead.
hello everyone. So my name is Wandamage Webaselassie. I am an assistant professor here at Texas Tech University. My department is in natural resource management, but I have worked with different colleges here in my university as well. And I was a fellow last summer. So if Professor Paul said I'm not the lucky one, I don't know what to say. So it's just my first one. So hopefully I'm expecting to continue this collaboration with the Institute. And we worked with Addis Ababa University, trying to come up with a master's program in bio-inspired design, which we have been doing here at my university. And it was a very successful and exciting experience. And I'll share the details when we get to the detailed discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now we have time for each of our alumni panelists. They'll have about 5 to 6 minutes each to share an overview of their continued collaborations that they've experienced beyond their initial fellowship. We have some slides that some of them have prepared. So first up, I would like to welcome Professor Agu to share her continued collaboration experience. So here are your slides, and if you can just let me know, and I'll advance to the next slide for you.
Okay, jump to the next slide because the first one is introduction, which I've already done. Okay, a little bit about where I started in order to get to this journey. And it started with CUNY having writing intensive graduation requirements that decided that every department must create WI and OER courses, and I started to do the things that took me on the journey to meet with the people in Futa at the UN Conference for the Status of Women. I met there with late Professor Edema, and we wrote a proposal together to get me to Futa to work together with them. At Futa, Professor Edema invited the people from the National Mathematical Center to join us in the seminars and workshops, and the person who came from the National Mathematical Center took that information back to the director of the National Mathematical Center at that time, then Professor Sholarin, who invited me to come over and share with them the work I was doing, because they felt that this was something that would be of national interest, and the best place to house it would be the National Mathematical Center. I couldn't go at that time because I felt I needed to be there for a longer period of time. I needed a sabbatical, and I tried to get a sabbatical from my college, and that was when I also wrote with them for the second proposal for the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program. And we were successful, both them and myself, because each set of people, both the institution and the fellow, have to submit their proposal. We were successful, and I got there. The National Mathematical Center at that time did not have an ethnomathematics research group, so my coming opened the doorway for that to happen through this project, and we engaged in this project for the whole year while I was on sabbatical. At that time, there was a new director, Professor Ona, who jumped on board the ship and liked what we were doing as a research group, and provided internal funds to join with what I got from the fellowship program for the project to continue. And we wrote for the project to continue. That's how I got the fellowship the third time, to stay at the National Mathematical Center to continue with the work. The work is on culture, history, and women's stories, a framework for capacity building in STEM-related fields. Can you go to the next slide, please? And what is the precipitating issue related to this? Well, women in STEM, we are underrepresented, and if you're from Africa, you are a rare breed. So this is a project also about promoting gender equity, or creating avenues for more women to participate in STEM, get into leadership fields in STEM, and move on beyond and to be just like me in STEM. Also, when you look at the mathematics textbooks, when they illustrate concepts and things like that, you don't find those illustrations from the African perspective, or you don't find much of those illustrations from the African perspective. I can think of myself as an example. When I went to university in Nigeria, that's where I started. I was learning about algebra concepts using snowflakes. I'd never seen snow, but those same things could have been taught to me using Adire, Ashoke, and other things we have in the African space. So this is a project also about bringing in what we have in the indigenous African Nigerian space to teach the children of Nigeria in a manner that will promote innovation, cultural heritage, while they are learning the mathematical concepts or scientific concepts that they need to know. So that was the impetus for what we are doing, and it is in fact one of the reasons why the project has persisted till now for over 10 years, because it started in 2014 and this is 2025 and it's still ongoing. Next slide, please. We do this in a manner that is mathematical storytelling. So it's not just developing the curriculum, you're also telling stories about the communities, about the people, the women, and so on, so that people can be more aware about these things. Next slide, please. The next two slides just give an illustration of what we are doing as a group in terms of developing curriculum. And one of the groups we were working with is the Nigerian Women in Mathematics, the Nigerian Women in Agricultural Development, in agricultural research for development. So we are developing curriculum that's based around their work, their research, and things they do. So just show the next two slides. This is a slide that relates to curriculum being developed around the indigenous mathematical systems of the people. This particular one is based around the Ndebele people that use dolls in different ways, both men and women and stuff like that. So these can be used to teach concepts in graph theory, in number theory, and things like that. And so we are doing a lot with regard to what we have in our culture. What are those cultural items that we have, like the talking drum, the ashoke, that can teach various mathematical things? And that is what we, the Ethnomathematics Research Group, together with myself, are continuing to do. And we have a few publications based on the work we are doing. We have had additional funds from CUNY, both internal funds from the NM, the National Mathematical Center, because they feel that this is a work that's very important because it is significant to Nigeria. We have also had funds from outside groups. Next slide, please, on additional funding. We have also had funds from outside groups, NGOs like Banafstrag, which is based in Lagos, has given us funds to field test the curriculum we have developed with training teachers in Lagos. Chistem Toys Foundation brought funds for the group to have a study tour to Abia State in Nigeria to learn about the Igbo people and things that relate to mathematics, including the scientific innovations of the scientists that created military armory during the Civil War. And then, like I said, we have had internal funding also from the National Mathematical Center. And next slide, please. We have been able to present our work together and publish our work together in many different scholarly forums, one of which was the Carnegie program has the mini grants that they give for the host and the fellow to go to some conference. I went with my host from CG's Futa. We went to the Forum conference in South Africa to present what we did in 2014, and that's also published in the Forum journal. We also published what we did in 2014 in the Mathematics Teaching Research Journal, which is a peer-reviewed journal. So if you look it up, you'll see it there. I have had several joint presentations with the research group, Ethnomathematics Research Group, since 2017. We do that almost every year in the Nigerian Mathematical Association annual meetings, and if they accept you to present, your work also gets peer reviewed and published. The same thing we have done with the Nigerian Mathematical Society almost every other year since 2017, when this work started at the National Mathematical Center. And in addition to that, the Nigerian Women in Agricultural Research for Development have their conferences every year where we endeavor to present our women's module, because we have a module that's separate based on the women stories that we are developing mathematical curriculum at. about. So these have been presented almost every year at the Nigerian Women in Agricultural Research for Development. And they also have a peer-reviewed journal where they publish work that is accepted for the conference. And the last conference that we have been presenting regularly and publishing our work regularly is the Society for the Advancement of ICT and Comparative Knowledge in Nigeria. And in fact, they have already accepted us to present at this year's conference in November in University of Ibadan. So I think I have, in a nutshell, captured most of the things, and I'll just touch on the last slide, which has to do with what I feel are some of the factors for the continuation of this work over a 10-year period. One big factor is that the work is based on Nigeria itself, Nigerian people, women who are making a difference in the landscape of Nigeria, Nigerian cultures, indigenous groups bringing their knowledge to the forefront. The second is that it is based on building capacity of a group that is underrepresented and that you don't have effective participation of women. The statistics on United Nations statistics, UNESCO statistics is all out there. Even the Mathematical Association of America has released statistics related to underrepresentation of women in STEM. It's there for everybody to see. The third is that it focuses also on the history and the culture of Nigerian people, Nigerian ethnic groups, how they think mathematically. And so since it is based at the National Mathematical Center that is the forefront for Nigerian mathematics, that's part of what has helped for the work to continue. And the last thing that helped for the work to continue is that it opened the door for a new research group at the National Mathematical Center. So you now have that as a sustainable aspect of the work, because if you have a research group, then it means that they are going to continue to do this type of research even after I am no more and the initial members of the team are no more. And the last part, which is significant, is investing in self. To me, this was something I was passionate, and I was ready to put my money also where my mouth was at times when there was maybe a desert in funding. I was ready to put my own funds to go to Nigeria to continue to work with the group. So this is very important, the investment in self. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Agu. And we'll have the opportunity to hear more from you during our moderated discussion. And also, if you'd like to hear more and ask questions to her directly, you can also choose to go into her small breakout group later on in the presentation. And now I would like to welcome our next panelist, who is Dr. Webeselasi, and I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. So thank you very much, guys, for attending my presentation. My presentation is, to see and discuss how can we sustain our relationship that we established using the Carnegie Fund forward. So I'll talk about my experience and also maybe my suggestions in maintaining those relationships that we established using this fellowship. Next, please. I think I'm gonna skip through this because we already introduced ourselves. This is a little bit of introduction of myself, which I did already at the beginning. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the purpose of our project was I am a trained ecologist, and I had an opportunity to work in the College of Engineering here at Texas Tech. And what we did.
I think her name is Taylor. She's been drunk.
So what we did was, whenever you see disciplines like biological science and engineering, there is a very big disconnect between those two. And what we understood is, they are not that disconnected. So we came up with an idea of bio-inspired design. So in order to make our engineers better, we can ask them to go to the natural environment and then learn from nature. And that's the main emphasis of the course that we started here at Texas Tech. It was a very, very good idea, and most people embraced it, including our students. And the plan was to take this new idea, information that we have to Africa, specifically Ethiopia, and that's what we did. And this fellowship was about looking at the opportunity, whether we will be able to establish a master's program in bio-inspired design. So we did different kinds of workshops, lectures, just to make people aware of what we're talking about. And there was also joint site visits between me and then the host, and also try to discuss and see whether there will be an opportunity to mentor and bring graduate students to this new thinking paradigm. So those are some of the things that we did while we were there in the fellowship period. So what were some of the outcomes that we came up with? We drafted a curriculum, per se. It is not implemented yet because there are, a whole lot of different bureaucratic loopholes that it has to jump. I think most of us are aware of this, but it was a very successful endeavor in terms of coming up with the idea, making officials know about it, and promises that there is an opportunity to implement it in the near future. So we delivered different guest lectures and workshops to make those people who are empowered to be aware, and then also general public to know what our idea was, and established a kind of collaborative research agenda that we can embark on moving forward. Because I did my Carnegie Fellowship last summer, so it's just brand new. So our hope is we will be able to continue through different kinds of channels. I'll talk about them in a little bit. And this grew beyond this fellowship, and we're trying to see whether we can establish an institutional linkage between my university here at Texas Tech and then the host, which is Addis Ababa University. So, the signs look positive. So that's what we're going to pursue in the near future as well. So the other thing that we're doing very actively and aggressively is looking for potential funding sources. Next, please. So here is one of the outcomes that we were able to achieve within this very short period of time. So we did work together and was able to be invited to this upcoming conference in Washington, which is the American Chemical Society. So we'll be present in this summer, and that will be the beginning, and then, but we're trying to pursue and then continue our collaboration in terms of monitoring graduate students together, and also trying to get some funds to expand our work in bio-inspired design. Next, please. So what are some of the opportunities that we had? We applied for different funding sources so far. We are looking for opportunities in National Science Fund to see whether there is a niche that we can fill in to get some funds from there. NIH is another one. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is something that we're looking into, and has a very promising kind of perspective for our kind of idea. So we'll try to maybe expand our effort in terms of getting some funds to widen and then strengthen our ideas on bio-inspired design. Okay, next, please. So what is the key to sustain, collaborations? The first one is to have a very clear vision and then mutual respect between, you and the corresponding partner that you have. And another one is to keep a very good and regular communication. That might be through Zoom, email, or corresponding different kinds of documents. And I show my willingness, to the host institution that I am always available for them if they want me to maybe advise their graduate students and things like that. So showing commitment will be another one. And building, capacity is something that our African institutions need. And yes, whenever the funds and the resources are there, doing it in person is very ideal. But you might not have, as Professor was saying, you might not have enough funds most of the time. So doing those virtually and using those technological alternatives is ideal. So that's what we're gearing towards to. And we are also trying to leverage, the connection that the institutions has before, because ours is not the first, but we'll try to strengthen the relationship we have and try to get the best out of this endeavor that we started together. Next, please. So here is our first purpose was just to present our work in the American Chemical Society, but they saw our work and then also invite us for iPoster presentation. So we'll be doing oral presentation as well as iPoster presentation at the same time. And we're also trying to prepare manuscripts together and publish in peer-reviewed journals. And also we're trying to co-advise students so that we can also strengthen our effort also and then show our impact as big as it can get. Next, please. Okay, so this is the question that we're going to talk about next.
We'll
so
talk
I'm
about
going to
this in
jump
the
through
panel.
it. Yes, yeah. So next, and this is, so Texas Tech, Addis Ababa University has participated in this, and it would not have been possible without the help of Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship. So I want to extend my gratitude and thanks for the institution as well. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing more about your collaboration during our panel. And then also you can, talk more in depth when we go into the small groups. So next, our next presenter is Professor Ugo. I'll let you take it over. I know you don't have slides, so I'll just let you speak.
Thank you, Randy. First of all, let me apologize sincerely for not having any sort of elaborate PowerPoint presentation.
It's completely fine.
I experienced a family tragedy recently, so I had to rush to Nigeria for the funeral. So I've been traveling quite a bit and just got back here, and so barely had time to recover from that trip before this event. So I just didn't have time to put together a PowerPoint presentation. So I sincerely apologize
It's
for
okay. We're
that.
really grateful that you're here joining us today.
Yeah. As I indicated in my introduction, I visited the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies at the University of Lagos between June and August of 2023. And the primary aim of that trip was for me to run a cultural theory retreat for junior scholars at the University of Lagos. Now, there's a bit of a background to this. While at Illinois State University for several years, I taught a cultural theory seminar, cultural and literary theory seminar for both graduate and undergraduate students for several years. And from that, and the primary aim of that seminar really was to sort of get students to see how literary studies, or what you call English studies, reinvented itself in the context of the redisciplinarization of disciplines happening in the 1960s, following the sort of cultural revolution that was happening in the United States and in the UK. And at the time, there was a burden on literary studies to respond to the cries of ordinary people on the streets. And so I've been teaching that course for several years. Now, given that background, at conferences every year, whether it was the African Studies Association conference or the African Literature Association conference or the African Studies conference in the UK, you would encounter junior scholars coming from the continent. They have great mastery of their material, including rich substantive content in terms of the interpretation of text, whether irrespective of the genres, or whether it was fiction, whether it was drama, whether it was a film, or whether it was a new media text. The real problem is that they had no really strong theoretical handles to help them unpack this text. So the proposal that I had pitched was for me to organize a cultural theory retreat at the Institute of African Studies to sort of introduce participants to the canonical or key ideas that have shaped the interpretation of culture. And I use that term culture more broadly, sort of culture as a signifying system rather than as a way of life. So sort of the key ideas that have shaped the interpretation of culture in the humanities from about the 1960s to the present. Now, the initial plan was to have at least 12 to 15 participants, but we ended up with about 28 participants at the seminar, and they included not just graduate students, but postdocs, junior faculty members, and in many cases, we ended up with senior faculty members at the university attending those seminars. And it ran for, I think, about 14 weeks. With the supplementary grant we got, we made photocopies of 3 readings for all the participants every week. We provided them with lunch, and if it extended late into the night, in many cases, I would have to use my own private funds to buy them dinner. Now, the 2 presentations that we've heard so far have emphasized the idea of capacity development, and that was, or capacity building rather, and that was really very central to that theory seminar. One of the things I did particularly in terms of graduate supervision was that I ended up with several junior faculty and graduate students in the department as mentees. And over the years, I've worked with them to write proposals, writing references for them. And in 2024, one of them was admitted into the Department of English and Cultural Studies at McMaster University to do a master's program. And only recently, another of my mentees who was in that graduate seminar was admitted into the program, the PhD program in rhetoric and communication at Iowa State University. In terms of my relationship with my host, Professor Patrick Oloko, I met him a long time ago, first at the University of Birmingham many years ago when I was doing my postdoc. He was there to attend a fellowship for 3 months, and we've been meeting and interacting in different conferences and academic events over the years. And after my fellowship, we've been trying to get him to apply for different fellowships. And last year he contacted me and said he wanted to apply for the position of a senior researcher through the African Studies program at Yale University. So he drafted his initial proposal. I looked at it, gave him feedback. We worked on it together for several months. He also needed to develop a course in modern African literature and film, which is a course that I've taught severally both at Illinois State University and University of Waterloo. So I sent him a copy of my syllabus and asked him to adapt it into a version that he will be comfortable teaching. The summary is that he got that fellowship, and only 2 weeks ago, he arrived in the United States and is currently at Yale University as a visiting scholar and will be there for 1 year with a very generous grant of about $80,000. I have continued my relationship or continue collaborating with the institution. Because of that fellowship, I came back to the university and persuaded the university to approve funds for me to lead a delegation from the University of Waterloo to Nigeria. And the background here is that the university had visited I mean, the international office was trying to sort of broaden its relationship with institutions in Africa. They had gone to University of Stellenbosch, had gone to University of Leeds, had been to the University of Ghana, but never went to Nigeria. So I went to the university president and said, look, I am, I had just been hired, but I'm saying, I'm here. I'm one of only two full professors, Black full professors at the university. Why didn't they go to my country? And the university president said, what do you want? I said, well, I want a delegation to go to Nigeria and see what I've been doing with various universities there. And he approved funds for us to go in February of 2024. And after that visit, when we came back, the university approved $50,000 for us to take 10 undergraduate students on the study abroad fellowship to the University of Lagos. And we're going to be doing that sometimes in February. Also, in terms of funding, while I was at the University of Lagos, I had partnered with a professor at the University of McGill, Professor Claudia Michel, to apply for a partnership grant of $2.5 million on a project entitled Transform. The whole idea, the main objective of the project was to look at the particular ways in which young people in Africa are deploying cultural text to transform their immediate communities, whether we're talking about Afrobeat music, whether we are talking about the use of social media, whether we are talking about canonical genres like film, documentaries, and feature films. And we were lucky enough to get that grant. And as part of that, as a co-PI to that grant, I had $30,000 to organize a symposium at the University of Lagos. And I already have two assistants. One of them, the PhD student that I met there at the University of Lagos. Another one was a visiting graduate student from Harvard who was doing her research in Lagos. And both of them are collaborators, and we would be hosting a symposium at the Institute of African Studies at the University of Lagos next year with that modest funding that we got of $30,000. Currently, I am working with two other professors, Professor Bonnie Bao, who is a professor of international human rights. In fact, he's currently the chairperson of the United Nations Committee on Human Rights, but also he's at McMaster University, by the way. And then I'm also working with Professor Kajetan Iheka, who is in the Department of English at Yale, but is also the director of the African Studies program. And his area of research is environmental humanities. And we're pitching a project on environmental justice and human rights in Africa. And we're currently working on a SHURK grant. That SHURK is a Social Humanities and Research Council grant here in Canada for $500,000 to run a research for 5 years. And that means we would get generous funding to admit PhD students and master's students, primarily from the continent, to work with us for 4 years. And we're also hoping to get some funding to host a major international conference on the same theme in the summer of next year. So that's the work that I've been doing so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then next we'll hear from Dr. Feda Flora. And sorry, I have your name transposed here on the screen. But she also has some slides, and we'll have about 5 minutes to hear from Dr. Flora, and then we'll be able to do some moderated discussion before we go into our breakout groups. So I'll hand it over to you now.
Now, thank you so much, Randy. Thank you so much, the panelists and the viewers here. I think for me, you can just move on to the next slide, because this is just our Faculty of Education. So our journey with Professor Robai started in 2023. And always I'll tell those who are prospecting to move into this collaborative way. There are times in society, what I believe in is how you relate in society with others is very important, because you never know where somebody will look for you. And I think for my case, that is what happened, because At the university, I've been in charge of our university academic welfare. And it is from there that when Robai was looking for a host, which today I'm happy because I seem to be the one of the hosts in the room. My name was given, and when she called me, I realized we had one thing in common because she gave me a story, and her story was on her class in standard 6 when she was in primary. And what happened is there was this case where a student was always being bullied by the teachers. And the reason was because the student was a slow learner. But in essence, as time has grown after primary, she realized that student was not a poor student in class. Somebody didn't just understand who this student was. And allow me, I also shared a case where during one of my teaching practice at the university, I went to this specific school, and one of our teachers kept on shouting at the student in the classroom, "Can you wake up and stop sleeping? Can you sit upright? Can you remove your sweater?" I had to look at this student twice for him to notice that maybe there is something he should not he should actually stop bullying this student. It is when we came, I checked at this student twice and realized that it's not that the student was sleeping in class. The student was actually a hunchback type of disability. So the student could definitely not sit upright. So that is when we saw, after that sharing, we realized there is an issue around inclusivity in education. And the last example I gave her was when I would teach in one of my classes in year 4, because I teach in the area of education management and administration, there was this young boy who would actually, when others are writing something, he would actually sit in class staring at you throughout the lesson. So once I noticed, twice I noticed, the third time I had to call the boy, and I was like, "What is the problem?" And he was like, "I cannot hear." And those were some signs that something needs to be done. And that is when we quickly worked on the project. And this is why I say, Carnegie, you are doing a great job in society. So our first role was we infuse strategies to create awareness, not only in the staff, but our teachers who are going to the grounds, so that we find out whether they can actually identify some of these cases. So Robai came in 2023, and you can move the slides. Just move on to the next one. So when she came in 2023, we brought in the Department of Curriculum Instruction, and she actually realized that even the staff itself were not having the basics. And therefore, she had to quickly say, we have to change how we are doing things. So we wrote the proposal, it went through. So when she came on the ground, she had to change a bit on what we had wanted to do. And one of the things that really was for an advantage to us, when she came, this was during teaching practice for our university for teacher educators. And that is why we quickly did a survey around the schools to really get to know what is really happening also in the schools. So by the time she was leaving, she had actually capacity built our lecturers in the faculty. But then we realized that we had a bigger picture, that even when these students go, they are still meeting others from the survey we had done, that quite a lot still needed to be done. So just move on. So this is when she went back, we actually realized there was need for us to ensure that we put in what we had gotten from the survey. So we had to do another proposal, and we are very thankful that Carnegie was able to allow this again. So when she came back, the first stop was now the schools. So we said, let's first understand what is happening in the schools. And from this picture, this is what you can be able to see. So I realized as a dean of the faculty that there is something that we are losing out. And I'm happy that Werunga came to bring this to us, because we have been waiting until maybe during teaching practice. This is when we move to the schools. But now from this picture, when we started using her and going to these schools, we realized that we are missing out on the school community collaboration. What can we do differently between the faculties and the community, our schools, so that it is a continuous activity? So she came back in 2025, and this time round, we just needed to ensure that we have a special needs program that is fully developed. So just move on. So I'll just move to very fast what has happened right now. From now, the time she has come, she has done for us 3 mandatory courses that we have ensured is going to be taught across all the 11 faculties, so that all our students, not only education students, can be able to understand what special students who are enabled differently are all about. And then she has assisted us to have a postgraduate diploma in education program for special needs, which we are now going to give students outside education. They come in for a 1-year program so that they're also able to get the skills. And we were finalizing on our BA program. Let's move on. Now, apart from this, as the output of our collaboration, we had a major conference. We've, of course, had 4 papers presented, but allow me to talk about this specific one, because this is, to me, a major area that has led to what we are thinking we can now do next. So because of her, when she went to India, she actually brought this lady, the first one in this picture. This is the president of the Division of International Special Needs globally. So when she came to Kenya, we actually agreed, and together with the Diocese Board of Directors, we made sure that we were able to bring this conference that was done in Kenya between 1st and 4th of July. Just proceed. Now, one thing that came out from this conference is they were able to open up quite a number of us, because I was able to bring in the deans of faculty of education. So in this conference, we had 10 deans from, actually 12 deans from faculty of education. But before they started the conference, they insisted that first they needed to go to the schools with special needs. So you can see in this picture that it was just the preparation, where we visited 10 schools. That was in Nairobi. And what I am happy about her coming in and this conference is, it brought together the Ministry of Education. It brought together, in the picture, KISE. KISE is the Kenya Institute of Special Needs. It has been the main monopoly around special needs. So we were all brought in the picture. Just proceed. Now, this is just an example of one of the schools that we were able to visit, because they were able to bring in presence and were able to have talks with the visitors. And those were just some of the visitors, because the conference brought in together over 100 scholars from outside the country. Just proceed. That is just the continuation of the conference. Proceed. There is something I just want to finalize. So now this is what we are asking. What next after the conference? And you can see the next question was, how do we do special needs programs in universities differently? Because KISE, Kenya Institute of Special Needs, has been very keen in the basic levels. That is from primary levels, that is the Kenyan education system. So that is where they've been mostly focused on. But remember, these kids are now grown up and they are coming to the university. So This is a group of the deans of education. So during the closure of this conference, this is a meeting now we were asking ourselves, when we leave and we have these special programs, what are we doing differently in each of our universities? Just finish up. Move on to the next slide. Now this is Robai in the middle there. No, just a bit up. Now, this is Robai, and this is the director of Kenya Institute of Special Needs, and this is one of the co-directors of Kenya Institute. And if you move to the next picture, that is why we are saying she has brought into Kenya the national dialogue, and especially at the national level and higher institutions. So the next question we are asking is how do we now change and refocus inclusive for the future of our children who have moved to the higher institutions? And those are some of the issues we are now discussing. So for instance, we are asking ourselves, the key question has been on grants. So like as I finish this, I'm asking as a host, she has done her part. She has brought in the national dialogue. Yesterday, I was with an official from the Ministry of Education, and she was the one who opened for us the conference, and she was telling me at the national level, they've picked this as a very serious conversation so that policies are put together for us to move and change something at the higher level. So the question now is, as part of these discussions today, as a host institution, and given the fact that we have now brought in a very strong conversation at the national level, what and where can we move so that we can get grants? And with these grants, with the 52 deans of education, because we are going to have a meeting in the next 1 week between 25th to 29th. This is a conversation we are continuing, and the question is who can actually work with us so that together we can change what Carnegie and Professor started in Kenya. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move us into our moderated discussion portion. We'll have a little bit of a shortened time for this, that way we can still have time for our breakouts. But I do have a few questions I'd like to ask our alumni panelists. And so I'll just pose this question to the group, and then you can feel free to answer it, unmute yourself, panelists, whoever would like to jump in first. But I know that some of you talked a little bit in your presentation about seeking additional funding beyond your fellowship for Carnegie. And so if you can just share a little bit more about that process of looking for that funding and what that looked like for you in your case. And whoever wants to speak to that.
I think I'll just go first.
Sure.
We've consistently been looking for funding in different ways, and we've been successful with some and unsuccessful with others. For instance, the US Embassy has funds, but that we are not yet successful with. Public, every year they have a funding call for programs like our own, but we've not yet been successful with that. The national, the Central Bank of Nigeria also has funds, which we've tried to get because of the entrepreneurship part of our project, but unfortunately, at the time we were doing so, there was a change in the management, top-level management there, so we couldn't get that. But some of the ones that we have gotten are smaller ones, like PANAFSTRAG giving us funding for teacher training activities, the National Mathematical Center, including us in their funding proposal to UNESCO for math literacy project. So that has funded us in different ways. And since our project is multifaceted, we've also gotten funding from the Bowery Center for Research, Development and Documentation to deal with their own section of the project, which was bringing the Bowery indigenous knowledge systems to the forefront.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything about?
I could
Yeah.
jump in. As just like Nkechi indicated, I've been lucky to secure funding from here through various institutions, some within the university, some outside of the university. So, for example, we got that funding through the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. 2.5 million, where I was able to secure 30,000 to host a symposium in Lagos next year. We're also currently working on another grant for 500,000. But I can tell you the two challenges that I am experiencing. One has to do with the particular rules around how these funds can be used. I'll give you a quick example. So with the $30,000 that I got through SHIRK, the university had to match those funds. Not exactly, but the university agreed to contribute $25,000 in kind, and that in kind contribution would come in the form of research assistants, two research assistants over 2 terms. Now, the real requirement is that those graduate students, specifically, they have to be PhD students, have to be doing their work related to the project where you got the initial funding. So that the idea is that there's sort of a mutual benefit between the principal researcher and the graduate students. Now, the real problem for me is that up until now, and this is something I found when I got to my university, my department does not admit international students. It's a policy that they put in place, particularly in the humanities, for maybe the past 10 years. So currently, I do not have students with experience related to the research topic that I'm working on. So there is, for example, say there are graduate students doing work on Canadian literature or doing work on medieval literature or doing work on 19th century Victorian literature. But those students can't benefit from the project I'm doing on popular arts in Africa. Now, but I have two students, graduate students that are already working with me, one at Harvard, one at the University of Lagos. But the university says we can't use the 25,000 to pay them. So you see where the conundrum is. We've managed to get the funding. The university is supposed to contribute those funding, but it's saying this funding is only meant for students in our programs. But I don't have those students in our program. That's a real challenge. The other part, and this is something that hopefully it's going to sort of frame it in the form of a recommendation. The real challenge I also experience is a sort of a lack of knowledge in how to mount grant proposals. When you're working with just your own team within North America, it's very easy. But when you start collaborating with most of our hosts, it becomes really very difficult because they don't have those skills yet. So one of the things I'm going to recommend, and I know that we're asking the Carnegie Foundation to keep doing more and more, is to think about hosting maybe a symposium or a workshop on the art of writing the grant proposal. So for example, the kinds of conversations that Flora was saying is that might help train potential hosts on how to mount a very strong grant proposal. So it becomes really very easy for both the host and the fellows from here. That's my only comment.
Thank you. That is a fantastic suggestion. I've made a note. I'm going to pose another question. What would you say was a key factor in your successful continued work between institutions?
For me, I would say I think it was the enthusiasm of not just my host, but also of the director of the institute and other faculty members. There was a real genuine interest in what I was coming to do. There was an openness to sort of learning new things, whether we're talking about pedagogical practices or we're talking about new concepts in the field or just even professional conduct. I'll give one quick example. While I was there, the director of the institute was teaching a course related to diaspora studies. I don't remember the exact title of the course. It was a PhD seminar and had invited me to a presentation that was then done by the students. And this comes back to the point that I think, yes, I think it was Flora about compassion, not just for students with disability, but for students in general. One of the things I noticed was that it was almost as if uh, faculty members were sort of bullying students. There's sort of a culture of cruelty where people talk down the students and people would literally insult students. And during my own the seminar and the feedback I was giving to students was very conscious about praising the students and telling them what they did right, and then turning to what I thought they needed to fix. And when we were done with that seminar, one of the things that the director said to me was, Paul, I've been teaching at the university for many years, but for the first time, you've taught me how to talk to students. So one of the great things about what Carnegie is doing is not just giving us the opportunity to help with curriculum development, with graduate supervision and mentorship and research collaboration, but sort of professional ethics. They're the things that we can't really quantify, where we're modeling for our collaborators what it means to be a thoughtful, compassionate, and kind teacher, what it means to be an empathetic advisor. These are not things that you can, quantify again in terms of dollars and cents. But they're really very crucial in helping our colleagues to sort of figure out, to learn and embrace new professional practices within the field in general.
Great. Anyone else able to share what
Yes.
a key factor was?
I would say a key factor for me was the director of the National Mathematical Center's visit to my institution when he came for a UNESCO meeting in New York City. He actually visited my institution, had meetings with the administrators, senior administrators of my institution, and had meetings with the department as a whole, sharing what was being done at the National Mathematical Center and their interest in this project. And I've been encouraging the Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program to have a session not just with fellows, but also with their administrators of their institution, whether it is a Zoom session or a face-to-face session, because administrative buy-in is very important. In fact, for me, with the National Mathematical Center, it became very important because by the time the project was to be instituted there was a new director.
Yes, the
I
administrative
think if
buy-in
I
is
can
key.
just add in a quick one.
Yes.
I think I loved the passion of our diaspora guest, Robai. She has a passion to change the world around inclusive education. Because apart from just coming, she ensured in one of the pictures, if you had a look at it, she took it in a special needs school. And every time she came here, I remember she even brought in a guest. And the first question was, the guest is not coming to the university, they want to be in a school for special needs. And you would see that excitement, and it has made the faculty realize that we have those such kind of schools around us, but we have not been doing so much with them. So that passion also kept us on our toes, that you can actually change the society when you have that passion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Well,
just wanna,
go ahead.
if I can, Randy. So I think what I want to add is, the open mind that our hostess had, and willingness to learn something new, and then expecting that there is something that they can learn from the different experiences that we amass while we're abroad, is what makes this endeavor successful as well. So I just want to applaud our host and the open mind that they have.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point too. Well, we have we're a little behind, but I still want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to move into their small groups. So what I'm going to do now is open the rooms, and our panelists are going to move over automatically into their rooms that they're hosting. Attendees, you should have the opportunity to select which room you want to go to, whether you want to be with Dr. Flora, Professor Agu. You can select that on your screen. And if you are not sure who you want to go in with, I can just move you over. But you should see that. You may have to click on your Zoom bar, and then you can opt into a room. Hi, everyone, welcome back. Sorry too if my closing your room ended a conversation mid-sentence. I wish we could have had more time for those small groups, but I do hope that you found value in being able to be in a smaller setting for a bit, being able to talk with the other alumni and with our panelists. At this time, we do have a few final minutes for question and answers. So if you have questions for our panelists that you haven't been able to ask yet, you can type those into the chat. And my colleague Chris is here. He'll help read those out to our panelists. So if you haven't asked a question yet, you can type that in. We really appreciate our alumni panel today for joining and sharing their expertise and their experience with continuing these collaborations beyond their initial fellowships. So if you do have questions, just feel free to type those into the chat box. And Chris will be able to read those out to our panel. Just give just a minute. I'm sure someone's typing.
Hi, it's been a wonderful presentation. We just wanted to wonder if I can share a contact for the panelists.
If we can share a contact for funder lists?
Contact information for the panelists.
Oh, yes, we can send that in a follow-up after the panel. Chris?
So we have a question for Dr. Ujor. Could you speak a little bit more about the cultural theory shift and specifically interdisciplinary?
Oh, absolutely. We're just having that conversation in the breakout room. Phil essentially wants me to repeat exactly what I said there. Absolutely. And the framing of that course, or in fact of that subject itself, has to do with the what you call the sort of cultural revolution happening in the 1960s. You had a wave of immigrants coming from Europe to the United States. You had second wave feminism, you had the eruption of different kinds of youth cultures happening. You had the beginning of indigenous resistance, particularly in North America, here in North America, Canada, and the United States. And so the real question to the major fields in the cultural sciences, or what we now call the humanities, how will our disciplines respond to all of these cultural shifts happening around us? How do we reinvent our current practices, our current disciplinary assumptions, our current theoretical handles to respond to all of these things that were happening around us? And it was that shift, what we now call the redisciplinarization of the humanities. It was to make this sort of Euro-American concepts, canonical ideas, to respond to the struggles of people in everyday life that led to the shift from what you call old literary studies to contemporary cultural theory, or what you call critical theory. And the whole idea is that theory, or these abstract terms and things we like to throw around when we unpack things, how one, they must speak to the struggles of ordinary people on the street, right? Don't tell me how great Shakespeare is. Tell me the relevance of Shakespeare to people suffering in the slums, right? Don't tell me how great Shakespeare was an artist. But if you're teaching me The Tempest, for example, don't tell me that this Caliban man is coming to help this other person who's Black, who doesn't have a voice. Tell me how to reread Shakespeare in such a way that it accounts for my experiences and my struggles. And so for me, that has been very crucial. And it comes to the real point about almost sort of indigenizing or reinventing, I'll use the word reinventing canonical concepts. They must master this Eurocentric ideas, but how can you use them to speak to current concerns and struggles around you? And finally, what this means is that we have to learn to be interdisciplinary, that we need to learn to bypass the traditional boundaries that we've set up for ourselves. So whether you're working in the field of environmental humanities or you're working in the field of the medical humanities, for example, you have to prepare to go beyond the boundaries, the disciplinary assumptions, the conventions, the key concepts that you've set for yourself. I think this is the most productive way to engage with study or research in African studies. So whether you're in history, you have to learn to deal with people in engineering. Whether you're in literary studies, you have to learn to collaborate with people in computer science, right? Whether you're in theater studies, you have to learn to interact with people in social media and rhetoric and composition. It's that interdisciplinarity that is going to equip us with the tools to do the kind of cutting edge research that is required of us, but also a new generation of scholars that we're mentoring on the continent.
Thank you. Chris, do you have another question that you'd like to pose in the chat?
It sounds like we have a lot of interesting comments coming up, but I don't see any specific questions. Does anybody have any other questions that they would like to ask the panelists?
Maybe I can just make one comment on one of the comments in the chats. The role of institutional buy-in is very important. It makes the work very easy for the host and even for the visitors coming in. So building, in case one of us is very much interested, building that relationship so that the institution understands their role. I remember the very first time in 2023, for instance, for Egerton, Carnegie was able to give us the knowledge facilitation part, which we were able to use especially for the surveys, and which I would really encourage that it really assists the hosts. And then in the second year, I know we were not able to get, but because the institution understood the importance of the diaspora guest coming in, I think it became very easy for us to, or rather for me to be able to convince them to assist on the sides to facilitate. And this made everything very easy for us, because even in our last meetings, I remember the VC had to come in, and I thought that is that became very easy for things to move faster. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps I could just jump in here and maybe I'm just repeating exactly what Nkechi and Flora have said, but it's not institutional buy-in, not just in terms of providing support, but just in terms of understanding the broader vision of the fellowship itself. And once they understand what is it the Carnegie Foundation is trying to do, it makes things easier for everyone. And I say this because usually once you go as a host, the perception is, or usually the reaction is, okay, what did you bring? Where's the money? Where's the, do you have 2 million? Was it here for us? And so if some kind of, I don't know whether it's a workshop, it's a retreat, or it's a field trip from the Carnegie office to various institutions to explain, to interact and explain to administrators why this is really important. That's very helpful. In my own case, when I went to University of Lagos, the current vice chancellor trained in the UK, so she understood exactly why this is important. The very day I started my fellowship, she left her office and came to the Institute of African Studies with a team of senior officials, including the university vice president. And that changed everything. And people had a sense that this is really important. We might not be lucky to have administrators in other institutions who have that kind of attitude. So there's need for a bit of work to be done there, and I don't know how the Carnegie Foundation is going to do that.
Did any of the fellows deal with the issue of decolonizing scholarship? And how did you handle that specifically in the natural sciences?
I see that Dr. Agu has responded to that in the chat. She said she faced that in order to get ethnomathematics research started and off the ground.
I will just throw in one of the ways I handled it. I got my mentor, Professor Stella Williams, who's the founder of the Nigerian Women in Agricultural Research for Development. I invited her to come and speak to the group that we were putting together about the importance of women's stories and what had been done at FUTA and what had been done at Panastrag.
Thank you.
Maybe I can also just make one quick comment. There is a question here. How any of us tried to get any internal support? I think for Egerton, we were able, internally we have a directorate that is in charge of transforming agriculture in Africa, that is called CADFP. And we were able to make a quick proposal so that they were able to fund us by getting the group to a specific place to at least be able to work together in a team. So for us, that is one of the quickest ways we were able to do so that we could get some local support.
Thank you.
I'll just like to chip in because my project involved study tours to different states in Nigeria. And before we would go, the Math Center had in place state liaisons that will liaison with the state administrators to see what type of resources or support they would give the study group when they came. So in some places we went, we had great support. In others, we had limited support. But the Math Center already had a structure in place for working with the states.
I see a question from Hillary regarding misconceptions by host institutions that Carnegie gives loads of dollars to the fellows. Transparency is key. Once you get on ground, I think it's important to talk to people, particularly in the department, the higher ups, about the entire package, what you got as a visiting fellow, but also whatever supplementary funds you got. I remember when I arrived Lagos, my host came with me. We went to see the director, and I explained to him that we had been given $1,000, and we told him exactly how we're going to send that $1,000. And I think I asked him whether he wanted me to give the money directly to him or to give it to the host, and then the host would spend the money and provide a detailed explanation of how that happened. So I think really transparency is key. But again, at times, as you all know, it doesn't matter how transparent you are. There are always going to be things, people coming up with all kinds of things. There's very little you can do about that. But one of the things I did is to try and help, people around. One of the things I did was I went to the manager of the institute and say, "Hey, I know that there are a lot of young people struggling around here. I need you to look for an indigent student, preferably a young man that you think I can support." And it turned out that the class representative was a young man who was doing his master's, hadn't paid his tuition. I paid his tuition and was giving him the equivalent of $100 for every month that I was there. That's all you can do. I mean, I don't know whether that feels this perception that there's plenty of money to be shared, but transparency and a bit of generosity can help douse things.
Thank you. I recognize we're over time now, so I'm going to keep moving us forward, but I do want to point out just the last message in the chat. If anyone is interested in a collaborative scholarly publication on decolonization and best practices, you can look in the chat to get in touch with Babasola. He shared his email address there. If this sounds like a collaborative project you would like to work on, publish something on the topic, please look in the chat right now. You can take down his contact information and get in touch with him. But this brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for joining and for the lively discussion we've been able to have over the past hour and a half. I do want to point out our next presentation for CADFP alumni is taking place on October 2nd, focused on navigating the current education and funding landscape. So we've heard some from our panelists today about funding opportunities they were able to acquire. We're all aware of lots of changes that are going on in the world recently that are impacting higher education research, funding opportunities. So we have a small panel who is going to be talking about their best practices and case studies for navigating this, how they've been overcoming these challenges. So we will be sending out registration details for that soon. So please watch for that and register to attend that discussion. Again, it's happening October 2nd. We have not released the registration link, but we will share it out within the next week. A recording of today's presentation will soon be available on the CADFP YouTube And we're also going to share a link to the recording in the September alumni newsletter. So thank you everyone so much. A huge thank you again to our panelists for joining today. We really appreciate their time and expertise sharing their experiences in continuing collaborations. And we look forward to continuing these discussions in the future in other presentations for our alumni community. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.